We need to talk about a significant development that is unfolding right now in Washington, a situation that on the surface looks like standard congressional oversight, but when you peel back the layers, reveals a calculated strategy of political maneuvering and, quite frankly, revenge. We are looking at a direct confrontation between the legislative branch and the judicial system, centered around the House Judiciary Committee and the man who, until recently, was tasked with investigating Donald Trump, Jack Smith. On December 3, 2025, Jim Jordan, the chairman of that committee, issued a subpoena. He is demanding that Jack Smith appear for a closed-door deposition on December 17th. Now, headlines fly by us every day, but I want us to pause and really analyze the mechanics of this specific move. This isn't just about asking questions. It is about how those questions are asked and who gets to hear the answers. To understand the gravity of this, we need to look at the details of the timeline, the refusal of transparency, and the chaotic rhetoric coming from Donald Trump himself. Let's start with the most telling detail of this entire saga: the format of the testimony. There is a massive difference between what the American public deserves to see and what the House Judiciary Committee is choosing to provide. We have learned that 6 weeks before this subpoena was ever issued, Jack Smith's legal team reached out to the committee. They made a straightforward offer. Jack Smith was willing to testify. He was willing to sit in a chair, face the committee members, and answer their questions. But there was one condition. He wanted to do it in public. He wanted a public hearing. For those who might not follow the nuances of congressional procedure, let's explain the difference here, because it is everything. A public hearing is exactly what it sounds like. Cameras are rolling. The press is present. You, the American public, can watch the questions being asked in real time. And more importantly, you can hear the answers in full context. You can judge the demeanor of the witness and the fairness of the inquiry. The committee, however, rejected that offer. Instead, they issued a subpoena for a private deposition. In a private deposition, the doors are locked. There are no cameras. The public is barred from entry. The only record of what happens in that room is a transcript that is controlled, processed, and released by the committee itself. This allows the people running the committee to cherry-pick specific quotes, leak damaging snippets out of context, and shape the narrative before the full truth ever sees the light of day. If the goal was truly transparency, if the goal was to show the American people that the Department of Justice had been weaponized, why wouldn't you want the world to watch? Why reject a man who is voluntarily offering to speak to the nation? The refusal of the public hearing is the smoking gun here. It suggests that this is not about getting answers. It is about controlling the story. This brings us to the rhetoric coming from Donald Trump. While his allies in Congress are maneuvering for secrecy, Donald Trump is publicly demanding a spectacle. In his recent comments, he hasn't been discussing legal statutes or procedural errors. Instead, he has launched a series of deeply personal, visceral attacks against Jack Smith. Donald Trump has referred to Smith as a thug, an evil man, and a failed prosecutor. He has explicitly stated that he believes Smith is a sick man and that there is something wrong with him. This language is not the language of legal defense. It is the language of personal destruction. Donald Trump has said he would prefer to see Smith testify publicly, but his reasoning is distinct. He wants the public hearing because he believes Smith cannot answer the questions. He wants the humiliation of his perceived enemy to be broadcast on television. It creates a fascinating and chaotic paradox within the movement surrounding Donald Trump. You have Donald Trump demanding a public show to humiliate the prosecutor, while Jim Jordan and the congressional allies are insisting on secrecy to control the political damage. It is a fracture in strategy that highlights the dysfunction at play. Donald Trump's grievances also seem to be expanding into erratic territory. In his reaction to these events, he went on a tangent involving autopens, machines used to mechanically sign a person's signature. He alleged that people around the Resolute desk were using these machines to sign important documents, claiming this constitutes a major crime. He wandered into a discussion about CAFE standards, which stands for Corporate Average Fuel Economy, a regulation regarding vehicle emissions, questioning who signed those policies and claiming that Joe Biden wouldn't even know what a CAFE standard is, joking that he would think it's about a coffee shop. While these ramblings about autopens and fuel standards might seem like distractions, they serve a purpose. They muddy the waters. They create a cloud of suspicion around the entire administrative state, framing everything that happened during the previous 4 years as illegitimate. It sets the stage for the argument that Jack Smith wasn't a prosecutor enforcing the law, but an agent of a sick system. Now let's look at the subpoena itself, because the timeline is designed to be a trap. The committee is demanding that Jack Smith turn over every single document related to his investigations by December 12th. That is 5 days before his scheduled appearance. Think about the sheer volume of material we are talking about. Jack Smith led 2 massive investigations, one regarding classified documents found at Mar-a-Lago, and the other regarding the efforts to overturn the 2020 election results. These investigations generated mountains of data: emails, witness interviews, grand jury testimony, internal memos, and legal briefs. Demanding the production of all these documents in such a short window is a tactical move. If Jack Smith fails to produce everything by December 12th, which is practically impossible given the scope, Republicans can label him as obstructing Congress. If he rushes and produces documents that are disorganized or incomplete, they can accuse him of hiding evidence. By setting a deadline that is set up to fail, they guarantee themselves a talking point regardless of what Smith does. We also need to clarify the context of the legal cases themselves, because there is a lot of misinformation floating around. Republicans are framing the dismissal of charges against Donald Trump as proof of his innocence or proof that the cases were meritless. That is simply not true. We need to understand Department of Justice policy. For decades, the DOJ has held the position that a sitting president cannot be criminally prosecuted. This is not a law passed by Congress. It is an internal policy based on the idea that a president cannot fulfill their constitutional duties if they are fighting criminal charges in court. Jack Smith brought over 40 criminal charges against Donald Trump. These charges were vetted by grand juries, groups of ordinary citizens who reviewed the evidence and determined there was probable cause to believe crimes were committed. The cases were moving through the system. They were not thrown out because the evidence was fake. They were not thrown out because Smith did something illegal. They were dismissed solely because Donald Trump won the 2024 election. Once he was set to return to the White House, the DOJ policy kicked in and the cases had to be dropped. The dismissal was a procedural technicality, not a vindication of conduct. Yet the narrative being pushed by the House Judiciary Committee is that Smith was a rogue actor targeting a political opponent. They are ignoring the grand juries, ignoring the physical evidence of classified documents, and ignoring the public record of the election interference efforts. They are rewriting history to make the prosecutor the criminal and the defendant the victim. This brings us to the revenge factor. Donald Trump's allies are not being subtle about this. They are using the power of the gavel to seek retribution. By dragging Jack Smith into a closed-door interrogation, they are sending a message to every other prosecutor, FBI agent, and civil servant in the United States. The message is clear. If you investigate Donald Trump, we will come for you. We will subpoena you. We will drag you before committees. We will attack your character. We will try to bankrupt you with legal fees and destroy your reputation. This is what legal experts call a chilling effect. It isn't just about punishing Jack Smith for what he did in the past, it is about scaring anyone who might think about doing their job in the future. It is a strategy designed to place Donald Trump above the law by ensuring that the cost of holding him accountable is simply too high for any individual to bear. Despite all of this, despite the bad faith of the closed-door format and the aggressive deadlines, Jack Smith's team has indicated he will comply. He will show up on December 17th. Why? Because that is what people who respect the rule of law do. Even when the process is being weaponized against them, they follow the process. However, we must be vigilant about what happens after that door closes. Since there will be no cameras, the American public will be reliant on leaks. You can expect to see selective quotes appearing in friendly media outlets, framed to make Smith look evasive or incompetent. You can expect the auto-pen conspiracy theories to be amplified. You can expect the narrative to be completely detached from the reality of what happens in that room. The tragedy here is that the opportunity for truth was on the table. Jack Smith offered to answer every question in the light of day. He offered to let you, the people, decide who was telling the truth. The House Republicans said no. They chose the shadows over the sunlight. And when elected officials choose secrecy over transparency, we have to ask ourselves, what are they afraid you might see? The events of December 17th will be a pivotal moment in the history of American justice. It will be a test of whether congressional oversight is still a tool for checks and balances, or if it has fully morphed into a weapon of political vengeance. We will be watching closely, waiting to see what leaks from behind those closed doors, and trying to piece together the truth that they are working so hard to hide.